Holy Ghost, Batman by Amala Run. Chapter 18 Paper Cuts and Quiet Wars. Drake Tower, penthouse suite, after dinner. The hum of the city had faded by now, replaced by the quiet ambient silence of upper floors and luxury insulation. Tim sat at his desk, the glow of his laptop casting sharp edges across his face as rows of data flickered by. He didn't blink as each new document loaded. Legal filings, purchase orders, board minutes, quarterly earnings reports. A knock at the door didn't pull his attention. Jason let himself in. Jacket half unzipped, dropping a flash drive onto the table like a loaded gun. Your guy's worse than I expected. Stephanie, curled on the suite's sofa with a blanket around her shoulders, looked up sharply. Her bare feet were tucked beneath her, one heel still lying sideways by the minibar. Tim took the drive without a word and slotted it in. Jason pulled a chair around, sitting backwards in it, hands folded across the top rail. Name's Flat Masters. Publicity? He's clean. Old money. Inherited a company called Valve Co. Supposedly made legit money off tech contacts in the 90s. Founded Axion Labs. Branched into private defense, R&D, and experimental energy systems. Backed out a decade ago. Since then, he's been flying under the radar. Stephanie frowned. Under the radar how? Jason pointed to the screen. You ever heard of ecto energy patents? Stephanie raised an eyebrow. Exactly, Jason said. That's sci-fi garbage. Energy fields, resonance, containment, energy inversion, arrays. He's filed over a dozen patents that don't even do anything according to standard physics models, but they're all held by shell companies, like a network of them. The paperwork alone took my guy hours to trace. Tim's fingers moved across the trackpad in silence, line by line. Data scrolled. Jason kept going. And get this, several of those shell companies also have assets tied to properties in Nevada, Utah, Illinois, and Wisconsin, remote labs, unmarked facilities, private airstrips, very little oversight. Stephanie sat up straighter. What kind of labs? Jason's expression darkened. I don't know yet, but the ones I could get satellite logs on don't have standard civilian licensing. They're not being used for conventional R&D, and one of them, an Axiom Labs facility, was scrubbed a few years back, completely, like someone walked out and torched the paper trail before shutting it. Tim's brow furrowed. Jason leaned in. There's something else. I can't trace any record of Vlad ever having custody of Danny. Not legally, not privately, not anywhere. There's no birth certificate listing him, no adoption, no guardianship orders. I don't think she has a birth certificate. Tim finally looked up. Jason's voice dropped. So how did he have her? Stephanie said, frozen, lips parted slightly. You're thinking trafficking, Tim said quietly. I'm thinking something's off, Jason replied. He didn't raise that girl, but he controlled her for a while. The only reason she's here is because Danny got to her. Stephanie's jaw tightened. Danny said he stepped in to protect her. He said she wasn't safe. That matches, Jason said. And the girl, she's smart, fast, and scared. Not in a skittish way. In a Pavlovian way. You know what I mean. Tim shut the laptop with a quiet click. We dismantle him, he said. Stephanie nodded. How? First step is cooperate, Tim continued. We dig through every holding he's got. Brain Enterprise can launch a quiet audit into any company tied to Axion Labs, or his foundation network, public safety concerns, energy viability claims. Doesn't matter. We just need a reason to pull the threads. Jason crackled his knuckles. I've got a few freelance analysts who owe me favors. They've leaked some rumors, make him sweat. If he's hiding something, pressure will force him to move. Tim's eyes darkened. And when he does, we will be watching. Stephanie leaned forward, elbows on her knees. We don't tell Danny yet. Not until we have proof. No, Tim agreed. Not until we know what Masters really did. Not until we can explain who he is and who Danny was to him. Silence settled like dust, heavy, still. Jason stood. I will keep digging. Don't get caught, Tim said. Jason smirked. You forgot who trained me? I remember exactly who trained you, Tim replied flatly. Jason tipped an imaginary hat and left. Tim remained where he was, staring at the closed laptop like it held a bomb he didn't know how to disarm. Stephanie rose slowly, walked over and rested a hand on his shoulder. He's our son, she said softly. Whatever's coming, we protect him. Tim nodded once. No matter what it takes. Outside, Gotham's skyline blinked under clouded stars. The hunt had started, the war, quiet, methodical, deliberate, was already underway. The car crunched to a stop on the long gravel drive, headlights briefly sweeping across the towering facade of Wayne Manor. Danny shifted, the weight of the small figure in his arms. Danny had slumped against his shoulder during the ride, out cold again the moment they left the hotel. Her soft, even breaths trickled the side of his neck. Danny adjusted carefully, mindful not to jolt her. The front door opened before they even reached the steps. Alfred stood framed in light, posture immaculate, as always, but his smile carried a touch of grandfatherly warmth that made Danny's shoulders ease. Welcome back, Master Daniel, Alfred greeted. Danny smiled tidily, a suit bag dangling from one hand, his daughter secured on his hip. Hi again, Mr. Alfred. I hope you have a room ready for her. She's been out since we got back to the hotel. I will come back for our bags after she's in bed. Alfred smiled at him. Right this way, sir, Alfred replied, voice as steady as ever. He glanced briefly at Danny, his expression softening further, then stepped aside to usher them in. The driver followed, with a polite nod, maneuvering Danny's small suitcase through the doorway. Jazz and Sam trailed in as well, dragging smaller rollers, and looking just as travel-worn, but grateful for the warmth of the manor after a long trip. Alfred guided them down the familiar corridors, pointing out rooms as he went. Miss Jasmine, Miss Samantha, I hope these rooms will do for tonight. You will find the linens freshened and a small assortment of toiletries laid out. Both women muttered thanks, already relieved to set their things down. Alfred continued down the hall with Danny, lowering his voice to something more private. I thought it appropriate for Mistress Daniel to share a room with you for tonight, Master Daniel. We will see to a more permanent arrangement once she's familiar with the house. It would not do for her to wake up in an unfamiliar place without someone she trusts close at hand. Then he nodded, touched by the foresight. Yeah, that makes sense. Inside the room, the bed was already turned down. The lamps glowed softly, throwing golden light across the dark wood furniture and heavy curtains. Then he carefully set Danny down, lowering her as though she were made of glass. She stirred once, her nose scrunching faintly, but she didn't wake. Then he crouched to slip off her shoes and socks, setting them neatly by the bed. He pulled the blankets up over her small frame, tugging them close, then pressed a light kiss to her forehead. Danny smiled faintly in her sleep, and Danny couldn't help but grin back. We'll have to get her some pajamas tomorrow too, he whispered, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Of course, sir, Alfred replied, quietly from the doorway. I believe Master Timothy has made himself available to assist in the morning. He took the liberty of clearing his schedule. Then he chuckled under his breath. That's Tim for you. With that, he returned to the foyer, with Danny in tow. The girl's other luggage was bigger, heavier, and the poor driver had struggled to bring it in. But Danny hoisted both suitcases with ease despite the slight frame, and brought them to their corresponding girls' rooms. Danny padded back towards his room, his footsteps softened by the manor's old carpets. The halls were quiet now. Sam and Jazz had settled in. Alfred was likely making his rounds before retiring, and Danny was still sleeping soundly where he'd left her. He pushed the door open gently, not wanting to wake her. The dim lamp light still burned low, casting warm shadows across the room. Danny was curled under the blankets, the faint rise and fall of her chest, steady and peaceful. Danny exhaled and froze. A plume of cold blue mist drifted from his lips, his ghost sense. Every muscle in his body went taut. Carefully, he shut the door behind him, his eyes sweeping the corners of the room. The temperature had dropped just enough to rise goosebumps on his skin. He braced himself for trouble. That was when he saw her. Kneeling at Danny's bedside was a pale figure in a hooded cloak, her posture reverent, curious rather than hostile. She was peering at the sleeping girl with an expression caught somewhere between wonder and longing. Danny's pulse kicked up. He knew ghosts. Not all ghosts, but he knew the important parties. And he wasn't expecting her at the family home. "Hey there," he said quietly. The girl startled. She whipped her head up, wide eyes, looking onto him in shock. You can see me?" Danny nodded, his voice calm but steady. "You're not exactly hiding your presence from my ghost sense. Blue breath's kind of a giveaway." Her expression twisted between disbelief and weariness. "No one's supposed to see me. Not mortals, anyway." Danny tilted his head, sympathy already creeping into his tone. "Guess that makes sense. You're supposed to be invisible, right? Secret." The name lit her like a stone. She flinched back, retreating into the hood's shadows. "That's not—" she tried, and cut herself. "Name's Susie Kerr. Just passing through." Danny's lips curved in a sad little smile. Greta hives, her hands clenched at the fabric of her cloak. "How do you know that?" "Because I know what you are, and what it costs." He let the transformation rings wash over him, light splitting his form until Danny Phantom stood in his place. His voice carried the gravity of someone who had walked both sides of life and death. "You help others let go, move on, find peace." Her jaw tightened. "That's my job. And now here I am." And he said, "A ghost with power enough to offer you the same choice. To lay it down, to rest." His eyes softened, a quiet plea in them. "You've carried this weight long enough, Greta." For a moment she looked stricken, as though the very suggestion cracked something deep inside. Then her head dropped, and she shook it fiercely. "No, I can't. I don't want to leave." Then he didn't push, only asked gently, "Why?" Her answer came as a whisper, trembling but certain. "Because my friends still need me. Because he still needs me. Tim." Then he nodded slowly. "Because of your friends." She looked away, her voice a whisper. "Someone has to look out for them. I'm all that's left. They're all I have." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by Danny's soft breathing under the covers. Then he looked at the girl in the bed, then back at Greta, and he understood. "Okay," he said finally. "Then this stays between us. Your secret, my secret. Nobody needs to know, unless you want them to." Her head shook back up, surprise in her ghostly eyes. "You'd do that?" Danny shrugged lightly. "I know what it's like to live between worlds. To want to stay close to the people you love, even if you don't know where you fit. You don't owe me anything. Just maybe keep an eye out for her too." He nodded towards Danny. Greta followed his gaze. For the first time since he'd seen her, she smiled. "A small, fragile thing. I can do that." Then he relaxed, letting his ghost form fade back into his human one. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Then I guess we got ourselves a deal." Greta inclined her head, coat shifting, as though caught by a phantom wind. A secret for a secret, she echoed, softly, and then, with a shimmer like fog disappearing, she was gone. Then he stood in the quiet room for a long moment, the faint warmth of the lamplight slowly returning as the chill lifted. He looked down at Danny, again sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the exchange that had just taken place. He leaned down, kissed her forehead once more, and whispered, "Don't worry, kiddo. You've got more people watching over you than you know." Then he settled into the chair by her bedside, keeping vigil until sleep claimed him too. Greta slipped through the walls of Wayne Manor like smoke, her form thinning until she was little more than a shadow tracing the corridors. Danny Fenton's words followed her like chains rattling soft in her ears. A ghost who could see her, who named her, who spoke with the authority to do what even she, bound by her deal with the spectre, could not offer release. Greta had guided countless lost souls into the arms of the presence, but no one had ever turned that gaze on her. The irony twisted sharply in her chest. Danny Phantom hadn't just offered to help, he could have done it, and yet he hadn't. He had given her a choice. She drifted through an old hall, lined with portraits of Waynes long gone, pale light slipping through her cloak as though she wasn't fully there. The thought returned, insistent and terrifying in its clarity. He could break the bargain. He could free her form. The weight the spectre laid across her shoulders, the eternal duty of psychopop, the burden she carried because her brother had stolen her life before it even had time to start. And that boy, that ghost, had been Tim's son. She pressed the spectral hand to her mouth as though hiding the tremor in her breath, though no one could hear her. Tim Drake, the boy she'd once hovered behind, half in awe and half in love. He had grown, stumbled, and chosen someone else, chosen Stephanie Brown. Greta remembered the first bitter stab of jealousy back then. The way Stephanie's easy laugh had slipped into Tim's days, where Greta's spectral presence could not. But the years had dulled that string. She and Tim had moved on. He into the warm steadiness of another man, Greta into the half-life of a spirit watching from the margins. Still, to see what had come of it, a child, dear child, and through him a grandchild. She'd been in the cave when Tim read the DNA results confirming that he was Tim's son. The stunned silence and then the excitement. Greta closed her eyes. She did not feel jealous now. The old pang flickered, yes, but underneath it was mourning. Mourning for the things she lost when her brother took her life. The chance to love openly, to grow into something more than tragedy, to stumble and recover as Tim had. The chance to have what Stephanie had found, the messy, imperfect, beautiful community of family. She paused at the edge of the grand staircase, her form a pale shadow against the glint banisters. Her coat stirred in a phantom breeze. Part of her longed to take Danny Phantom's offer, to finally step free of the bargain, to let go of the ache that clung to her since childhood ended in blood. But then she thought of Tim, tight, steadfast Tim, and the people gathered in this house around him. She thought of the boy who had just kissed his granddaughter's forehead and promised safety with his whole being. They needed me. He needs me. The thought gave her shape again, gave her a reason. She would not cross over, not yet, not while she still had the strength to watch. Greta eyes turned away from the staircase, her eyes lingering back towards the guest wing. She had kept others' secrets in life and in death. she would keep his now. But in the quiet of her soul, in the space where even the spectre could not peer, she whispered a prayer she no longer knew how to aim. Please, let me stay long enough to see them safe. Let that be enough. And then she vanished into the manor's shadows, unseen, unheard, watching, always watching. And that was the chapter. I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like. If you like my videos in general, feel free to subscribe. I do podfics. You can commission me to do podfics. Infos to that are in the channel description. I just recently learned that Greta Hives is actually like a DC character. When I first read this, I really thought it was like an original character, which, wow. I did not know that before, but now I know. Now I got smarter. But yeah, other than that, enjoy the rest of your time and see you next time.